What if the reason that your dreams don't feel like they're moving isn't about how badly you want it? What if it's not about the hustle or luck or having a perfect plan, but maybe it's that you don't really know exactly where you're starting from? Last time we talked about the dream machine, this idea that lots of us aren't using any sort of real system or pathway to pursue our dreams, but if we had the right kind of machine or tool, again, a machine is something that helps us transcend those natural limits, we could continue moving our projects forward. Now today we kind of get a little bit further underneath the hood and really start to figure out how this thing works and why it continues working even when life pushes back, even when life gets hard, because we know it's going to happen. As I started on this journey of learning, really kind of digging in deeper and deeper, I realized that almost every project, every dream, every aspiration just kind of follows the same pathway. You know, it starts the same, it has the same things that speed it up, the same things that slow it down. And this is actually the sheet of paper that I developed about a year ago when I wanted to really break things down into what's at stake. And it started as a book and it got smaller and smaller down to a table of contents, and eventually it was just this sheet of paper. And again, I just kind of keep coming back to this idea of a machine. And in this case, you've probably heard the phrase, you know, we built the plane while we were flying it. So I kind of use this idea of a plane to represent the overall project. And a plane's got two major components, right? It's got this fuselage, the main part of the plane, and then it's got these wings that help give it lift. So the fuselage, the thing that everything else connects to, is our purpose. Our purpose aligns all of the pieces that get us excited about moving forward. So the wings, the part that actually give us lift, is really composed of two things, and they need to lift equally and move together. And so the first piece is the confidence. We need that confidence to move forward, but we also then need the management to really understand what needs to happen next and who's in charge of what. And then obviously there's other things like a little windshield, a tail, some tail fins, but you get the picture. We've got a plane, and it's a machine that can move us forward at great rates of speed and lift us up and over all the obstacles that we encounter. All of us have varying amounts of confidence, but it kind of lives on two axes. In order to have confidence, we need to have two things. We need to have both knowledge and resources. Every project, idea, dream, and every person all kind of land at their own spot on this continuum, but it kind of breaks down into what I kind of consider four quadrants. And everything lives within this space. So you might have really high knowledge, but not very many resources. You might be lacking the money, the time, or something else. This might be an area of your expertise. You might have a bunch of resources, time, money, and looking for something to do, but you don't know much about it. And where we want to push your project ultimately is in this top corner where you have all the knowledge that you need and all the resources that you need, and that's what's going to give you that highest level of confidence to move forward. Now, each of these situations I'm sure you've been in before where you kind of know what you want to do, but you have no idea how to get there. You're confident you can make it work, but you don't know where to start. Sometimes we have all the things lined up, and then we just need that nudge. That's kind of where this whole business idea name came from. Was I was describing it to a couple of people, and in the same day, two different people said, why don't you just call it nudge? You know, every project just needs that little nudge to put it over the edge. The next strong realization really came about as I realized that each dream or aspiration moves through that same process. As it comes into our head and we get this idea about some place we want to get to, this pathway and a journey and a final destination. We start really refining that. Then we need to plan it out and figure out what that map looks like to get us to that destination. Then we need to follow the pathway. And as always, things change, we readjust, and we need to re-navigate over and around, just kind of like the bear hunt song from when you were a kid. And you might have to go over it, might have to go under it, might have to go through it. And if we're successful in the dream it, in the plan it, in the build it, we get to accomplish the thing and we live it. Now, whether we accomplish the goal or not, we've changed. And that's one of the most beautiful pieces of this whole process is, regardless of the outcome of our project, we've grown and we have more capacity to take on the next piece and a better understanding. We've got that more knowledge, we've built our resources, we can bring more confidence into every future project that can bleed into the others around us, and it can help lift them to pursue their dreams and aspirations. Now those 4 steps seem pretty simple and it seems pretty logical, but 2 different people can go through their same process and it can be very different outcomes. And that's not completely random. I've watched a lot of people chase a lot of different dreams, whether that's a business or a park project or even just eating healthy. And it really just comes down to a couple of things that everybody's chasing. They want to be healthy, they want to be happy, they want to belong, they want to feel like they're part of this bigger, greater good and moving the world forward. And that's where a lot of times this fear comes in, because we know that our dream and our aspiration feels like a challenge and it feels like it's difficult. And again, when we stop thinking that it's only going to take just raw effort to achieve that dream, we can start to think about what it might need to be stacked upon, the tool that we might be able to use to get there. So again, you've probably heard this quote about insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results, right? If you're like me, you remember the game Oregon Trail. And when you come to the river and you got to ford the river, if the water's high, you're probably going to get washed downstream. But if you had a tool, you look for a bridge or a raft, now it doesn't need to just be you in this extreme effort. You can actually use a tool to push you forward, to cross over to that other space. And just like in Oregon Trail, our goal is keeping ourselves safe, but also making sure that we show up for the rest of the people in our wagon, our friends and our family, and those who are most important to us. And again, that confidence to go across the river comes from having a knowledge of what that situation looks like and then the resources to actually get there. Here's what that looks like in a couple of different situations. Back in the late 1800s, Alice Guy, she was a secretary from France, living in Paris, working in a camera shop, and she realized that moving pictures, movies, were being used to just document boring stuff like a train coming into a station. Life is full of these amazing stories. What if we could actually adopt this new technology to tell the same types of stories? And so she's seen by many as the first actual, film director telling stories through that media. And a lot of the things that she came up with still stick today. And it's the systems, the structure, and the tools that she built that was able to open up this completely new pathway in movies and motion pictures. At the time, cameras and movies were so new that nobody had extensive knowledge, and she definitely didn't have that highest level of knowledge, but she had confidence and a vision that she could do something more, and she used that confidence to take her shot, ask for an opportunity. A few people rallied around her to give her those opportunities, and they realized that she had something special there, and that's now bled out into the rest of the world and supported thousands, millions of people in their passions for storytelling and media, and results in what we're doing here today. So sometimes it's not all about having all the right things lined up, not having the right skills, and it's simply the permission to get started and follow your dream. Now, another story, 50 years later, 1940s, George de Mestral's out hiking around in the mountains with his dog, and his dog gets full of burrs, and they're all stuck to it. Now, rather than being frustrated and just tearing them off like we all do, having to just tear those huge chunks of fur out, he got curious, and he looked under the microscope, and he saw that there was these little hooks, and they were hooking in on the fabric of his clothing and the hair of his animal. And so he realized that maybe there's something here. So that idea of the hook and the loop came to him almost immediately, but we didn't have the technology at the time to make these tiny little loops and the tiny little hooks. So for the next 13 years, he pushed at trying to figure out how to actually get these things to produce in a large enough scale that we could use them. And now they're produced at such a large scale that Velcro is in almost every one of your homes. It's in your clothing. It's in the tools we use on a daily basis. And it all came from that one just instant of inspiration. But then from there, he had to build the structure and move step by step for years to accomplish this goal. And once that goal landed, it moved like wildfire through our communities, and we find new uses for it every single day 100 years later. The key line through both of these stories is that neither of them probably felt like they were ready to undertake this massive undertaking, but they both had an inspiration and a spark, and they continued moving one step at a time, bringing others with them, building systems, building teams to accomplish this massive impact in the world. And that's exactly what we can do with any project if we follow those pathways moving forward. Internal doubt or maybe not feeling ready, that's one side of it. But even when we get that readiness and that feeling to move, A lot of times we think there's all these things outside that are going to keep us from being able to move forward. So obviously there's a list of those internal things that keep us from feeling like maybe we're ready to move forward. And that might be the training, the preparation, but there's all the external pieces as well that we often think that the world won't let us move forward. We're not in the right position in our society, or the right name or title behind our name. And I've got a story to tell you about a group of kids who overcame all of that. A few years ago in my daughter Maven's class, they were given an assignment to create a project that they were going to pitch. And all these 10-year-olds were excited about their projects. And this group, the group my daughter was in, they were able to pitch their class. They were able to advance from there, pitch the whole school, advance from there. And then it came to a whole community pitch where these kids with no training, no funding, no background, they just had this passion and a willingness to jump in and get going. They were able to outpitch adults. Their idea was putting in accessible playground equipment. They saw students in their school who weren't able to enjoy recess the same way they were. And they had an understanding that with a few simple tweaks, a few changes to the setup of how the equipment was, they could actually allow others, the whole range of students, to enjoy the same favorite subject that you and I might have had as a kid, which was recess. Ultimately, they were successful in raising over $10,000, and they were able to put that equipment into place, into use at their playground. If a room full of 10-year-olds can, outpitch adults and make that change happen in a short amount of time, the idea of I don't have enough resources or now's not the right time probably needs a second investigation and really look at it from, is this the place that I'm at, or am I just putting this out there as a possible barrier? So going back to the beginning, all these projects are kind of the same. They all have those internal doubts and the external roadblocks, but really none of that's going to go away before you get started. And this is a key point. Started. When are you actually starting? A lot of people will say, oh, I'm going to work on that when this happens or when that happens. But just by having the idea in your head, you've already started. So you're already on that pathway, moving in higher knowledge, in more resources. You may as well continue taking one step at a time. And that's where we come up with another framework, and I call it MINS, most important next step. MINS. Keep this in mind as you move forward. It's easy to remember, and you don't have to have a long list. It's simply the most important next step. If you keep taking one step at a time, you'll keep moving, you'll gain momentum, and it'll be easier to continue to take those steps. Obviously, like anything, we experience changes in the pathway, and so that's the great thing, is we're not looking out 50 steps. We're simply looking at the most important next step, and as those changes come up, we can adjust the next step. So now you've seen how we move from a dream to a plan to the action, and then the accomplishment, whether we actually accomplish the dream or we simply have changed and become a different person who's capable of doing more. Next time, I want to show you what it looks like to actually become that person who takes the most important next step. Not on someone else's project, but on the things that matter to you and the things that matter most in your life. What's it going to look like to become the person who's actually moving towards the dream rather than thinking about starting? Because again, by thinking about it, you've already started. You may as well keep moving and continuing to take each next step.